We want to look at the character palette, talking about type and lettering. It's going to come on to the Illustrator project, whatever you're working on. This is the character palette here, and it has the character, the paragraph, and the stroke. Now, the character has a default type that comes up here. In this case, it's Myriad Pro, regular. And I have, with the Myriad Pro, I have light italic and light and black condensed italic and black condensed. Bold and black are very heavy fonts. And this particular one has quite a lot of choices to be had. And you'll see the choices here. Regular, italic, bold are generally the ones that are there, but this one has a lot more. So let's go to a font. Now when I pick a font, when I select the Myriad Pro here, this font menu, it actually opens up and shows all the fonts that are on your particular computer. Now, your computer might not have the fonts that mine have because I've added more to them. Some are very generic and are on all of the type fonts, but others you get from different places here and there. One that's pretty similar is Times. Let's go down to the T's, and this scrolls, and it also shows you the font in its face, so that if you don't know the name, you know what's there. Now, Times is something that's on a lot of, well, every computer has Times. Times or Times Roman. Now, Times has a regular italic, a bold, and a bold italic. I'm going to go to Times Bold, and it says here Times Bold. This box here is for the point size. Now the point size in this case is a 12-point font that is what normal type you would see in a newspaper. You can go to 72 points, which is an inch, or you can go to anything in between here as needs be. But this is how you control what the font is going to be. Now, if I come over here and say, take my type tool, this type tool on a regular type tool, just select that. Behind the type tool, there's some other choices we'll talk about, but type tool and type on a curved path here is the two we're going to use the most. So if I come out here and I just click anywhere, it starts a clicking cursor. And at 12 points, it's not very big, so I'm going to come over here and make it 72 points. That happens to be an inch high. And I will type a word on the keyboard. And this is a font that is sitting on a one line right here, and that is what's called a baseline, and it has one anchor point right here. Now notice that it's on the left. It can be left, it can be on the right, it can be centered. If I go to paragraph and say I want it centered, this is the code for paragraph. This is flush left, this is flush right. This is justified, which means if you have a body of copy, they're all the same length. I'm going to go to center align. You see that little center button lines up there, and now it's, if I put it in the center guideline here, I'm centered on the page. Now this is a serif type. Serif is anything that has these little wiggles on the end of the letters. It comes from early calligraphy, where you had to have a serif stroke to enter into the stroke to make the ink flow, and then you had an exit serif to get your pen up off the paper. And so fonts have come this way with these serifs. There's four major font groups: serif and sans serif, which doesn't have any little wiggles or boxes on the end. Then there is script or calligraphy-like type. That's the third one. And the fourth would be anything else or other. Font that looks like sticks or bubbles or whatever it's going to be is the fourth category. Now, when I come back to my character, this is the point size. This box right here determines what's called the leading. That means the distance between the bottom of one line of type to the next line down. That's if you have a body of copy, it is how far apart the fonts are in between. You have other things that happen in the font that you need to remember. This Y coming down here is called a descender. And the T going above the height of these regular lowercase letters, that's an ascender. So is an L, so is a B, so is a D. The capital letters or uppercase letters ascend to that height as well. And in between the characters is what's called the kern, the space that's in between each letter. Now sometimes the letter may lean one way or slant another way. Like here you get a lot of space in here because the Y is slanting away from the R, and the R has a little arm hanging out here, so there's a little more white space there. So those are some of the things you have to be aware of when you're putting type together. The kerning here is under auto, which means that it's going to automatically set the space between letters, so in most cases you don't have to worry about it, but then there are some times when you will want to manually set the kern. This space bar right here is the space between all of the letters. This one is just for individual letters between the H and the I and the I and the S. This one takes that whole word and it's at 0. Now watch what I do if I make it at plus 75. Well, I got to select it first there. Okay, plus 75. You see it gaps and it spreads out. And you can do that, especially with headlines or decorative lettering. You can spread the kern equidistantly wider. And subsequently, you can also go to minus 75. And, well, I got to select it first. And then go minus 75. And it starts to squeeze on. In some cases, they actually touch and overlap each other. That's a little too heavy. Now, you can affect this with your keyboard. If you hold down the Option key and the left arrow, they spread apart by 20 points. And I'm coming back now to, now I'm at, I was at minus 25, now I'm at plus 25. So you can affect it that way, or you can come down here and say, give it to me in big bunches. But that's the kerning effect. These boxes here affect the percentages. It says 100% in both boxes. This is the width of the letter, and this is the height of the letter. For example, that's 100%. That's the way it comes when it's designed. If I go up 101%, you can see that the letters are actually getting fatter. Each one is getting fatter. So you can make them not as high, but wider to take up more space. This one controls the up and down percentages. If I go up, you see they get taller. Or I could go the other way, 100% down maybe to like 80%. And I have then affected my type visually. Now, those are percentages. You can actually just grab the handle here and move it around and squeeze it. Don't get it so you can't read it, but you can manually squeeze it. If you had to have something that was a little flatter or something like that, you could do it manually. And here I'm going to put it back to center. It's this box right here is the baseline shift. Now, not very often you're going to worry about the baseline shift. If it's 0, you're right on the baseline. But if I increase the baseline by, let's say, 12 points, you see it jumps up above the where this dot is. It's higher. And subsequently, you can also say I want a negative 12, and it goes below the baseline. Or you could just hit when you're here, I'm at 12, 13, 14. I'll just get lower and lower. And you see it's going below that anchor point, which is dropping it below the base point. There are some times when that's necessary, and there'll be times when we do, I'll point that out to you. But let's go back to 0 there. And it's sitting right on that baseline created by that anchor point. And this is something that I don't use very much. It's degree of tilt. If you wanted to tilt it 45 degrees, each letter would tilt 45 degrees as it stood there. I don't find that very useful in making a word legible. You have to turn your head and kind of reread the word to get it to be that way. So I wouldn't use that all that much. So that's how the character works. And of course the paragraph is the left and right and center alignment. And then if you have body copy, you can have it all justified, or with the last line just coming as it is, or centered, or flush left, or spread. That was an unscheduled cough. Now, the stroke it comes with these lines too, and the stroke we know is. Let me turn off the lettering here and just show you a stroke. If if I have a line here that is, I'm going to make it a black stroke. Okay, there it is. And it's 1 point. That's how it comes. Now, if I thicken the line, and you can see it's getting thicker, thicker, thicker. I'm up to, let's go to 20 points here. It's still just one line down the middle that's defining this line. It's not a shape, it's a stroke. It's just a line. It can be a shape if I go here and say object path outline stroke. You see the stroke goes away and now it's an outline. Now it is a shape. But let's go back, Command Z. And another thing I always like to look at is these end caps. If I make it a round end cap, look what happens. It makes it round out in there. And sometimes that's useful in the design you're using. If you have corners, you can also say, I want the rounded joint. I have no corners or elbows in this thing. But if I did, it wouldn't be sharp. It would be, well, let's see if I can make one that show you what I'm talking about. If I have a line like this and it's 20 points, you see, without the rounded cap, right now it's got a rounded cap on it, so it's got a curve right here. But if I take that off and go to square, you see I have a square end cap and a square joint there. So that's up to, here's the squares and here's the rounded. Depending on what you're working with to make that work. A stroke, we measure in points. The size of the lettering is measured in points. And so is the thickness of a line. That's a term that came from Gutenberg when he invented the, not the act of printing, but the ability to have movable type. He had no measurement. He had no inches. He had no millimeters. The ancient Egyptians used their fingers, and from the tip of their finger to their nose as measurements. Not too accurate. So he would take a pin and stick it in a flat wax, and he would make a hole in the wax, and he would call that a point. He put another point just above the first hole, and that was 2 points. 6 points, 7 points, 8 points. 10 to 12 points is the size type we have in our books and newspapers. So that was his measuring device, by just sticking a pin in wax and making a hole, making another one, making another one, making another one, very close together. But that's where we get the term point from. Now, if you want to change font, you select the font, take the type tool and click on it, click, click, click. You get that backlight. You can go to character and say, okay, I think I don't want times. I want this VGA rounded bold. And voila, it's that. Now remember, we messed around with it here, so I'm going to come back to my type and say I want that to be 60 points. I want the size to be at 100% in width and 100% in height. And that's virtually the way the type was set up when it was designed. This is a cap with lowercase, or you could make a copy of this and with the option key and then with the shift key bring it straight down and click, click, click. I backlit it, put on my caps lock and write it again. Now I can make a quick comparison as to whether I like it in all caps or caps and lowercase. Personally, for headlines, I like all caps because there are no descenders or ascenders to hook into other lines, and it just reads smoothly. So you can change your font to any number of fonts you have on your machine by going into here and scooting up. If you want to go into the A's and B's, you have to let it roll up or roll down if you're going to go the other way. But that's how the character box works, and all of the type that we'll be using is going to come through this character box as we set it up and prepare for what we're going to use, whether it's a headline or a subheadline or body copy.